you're probably all familiar with the scorecards that live in Salesforce scoring our teammates. So what I'm going to touch on today is just how to score fairly without bias and keep basically personal feelings out of it to make decisions based on the concrete rubric. So anyway, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Clark. I am Senior Specialist of QA. To those of you who do know me, my apologies, you're stuck with me again, but we'll keep it light and fun. So before we kick off everything, let me pass over to Susie to introduce herself for those who don't know who she is.
Thanks, Daniel. Hi, everyone. So wonderful to spend some time with you today. My name's Susie. I'm the QA manager here at Evolve. So Daniel and I support pretty much all of our frontline facing teams. So from OGS to sales, DAs, performance, retention, our BPOs. We're supporting all sides of the business and making sure that we are, having those wonderful interactions with our customers, be it owners or guests, and really making an impact with each interaction. So excited to spend some time with you all today and just get to know you better. Because I know we haven't had a lot of FaceTime with the team leads. It's been a lot of manager connects. So really excited to just get to know you all. We're going to be meeting on a regular cadence moving forward, which Daniel will kind of share some insight there. But yeah, just wonderful to connect.
All right, brilliant. Well, we'll get moving things along. First of all, this is a really solid group of backgrounds we got going on, everybody. These are 10 out of 10 on the backgrounds on this call. Well, going to outer space, we've got jellyfish, it's Halloween. Love it.
All right, let me go ahead and share screen and we will get this kicked off.
All right, guys. So like I said, we're going to talk today about ensuring fair and objective scoring. So you're going to be scoring your teammates' interactions in the future if you're not already doing it. So quality assurance is about ensuring that those interactions are going to be, completely fair, completely honest, and objective. So it's not about, we're not doing this to catch mistakes. Honesty is what's going to ultimately build your teams to be stronger. So we want to avoid bias, and we're going to in turn hopefully foster a more positive, objective workforce for us all to work in. All right, so participant expectations. So what do I expect from all of you? So first of all, through this session, I want you to reflect honestly on your own scoring habits. Have you scored teammates in the past? Was it always honest and accurate? Probably not, but that's what happens. I'm going to play a call, so I want us to all participate in a call scoring practice and compare it to the rubric. So, how would you personally feel about it? But what does the rubric say? And, I want everybody to be, feel free to participate. Let's keep this fun, keep this open. Come off mute, whatever you want to do, raise your hand, chime in whenever you got anything that you've got something to add. Like I said, share perspectives. I love for people to share your perspectives. We all come from different backgrounds, have different schools of thought. So always interested to hear new things. And then commit to using the consistent rubric-based scoring in your day-to-day work that we're going to cover today. So like I said, keep it fun. If you don't, I'm going to hit you with a Simon Cowell laser beam eyes. So let's keep it fun. All right, so key takeaways. So once we do complete this, what do I expect for you to take with you? So first of all, hopefully when we're done with this, I want you to be able to identify where bias can creep into your scoring. And there's going to be several reasons why that can happen, which we'll cover today. I want you to apply the Bias Buster checklist, which I'll get to later on in the conversation, so you can make consistent and objective scoring decisions. And I want you to be able to deliver feedback using the rubric, so using those scorecards and using neutral language. So this isn't personal when we are scoring these calls. We want to keep it as neutral and as based in reality as we possibly can. And then also explain why fair scoring strengthens teammates. What is the benefit of us being, honest and fair in this scoring, which is going to lead to better customer and business outcomes. And also it's going to lead to a better team atmosphere for all of us. All right, so kickoff. So why does this matter? So first of all, quick show of hands here. Who has ever experienced bias or participated in bias, whether it be personal or professional? Pretty much everybody on earth, regardless. We've got what we like, what we don't like. So, bias always exists. It's not necessarily always a bad thing. Maybe you relate to one group more, if they like the same food, music, sports, that's going to be bias. That's going to lead you to, have feelings towards those groups. So basically the message today I want to emphasize is just being nice or justifying intent in the scoring that you're going to be doing. it's not helping the teams. What it ultimately does, it hides the areas where teammates need to get better at their job. So it's really just to help everybody grow. And I've kind of got an example here if we did just kind of go with biases or, our feelings. So imagine a driving instructor who passes every student because they were polite and because they tried hard, even though some never checked the mirrors or stopped at red lights. Those students, they might feel great in the moment, but when they get on the road, they're going to cause accidents. By inflating the score, the instructor didn't help them, ultimately set them up for failure because they don't know what they're doing correctly. And when I do discuss this, I'm pretty sure that that's what driving instructors do anyway, because people are terrible drivers these days. So maybe they'll just pass them. You show up, you're going to get a license. Enjoy your day. But we're here today to better understand how to score our teams, fairly based on the facts that are in front of us. We're often swayed by our own feelings and beliefs. However, hopefully after this session, you can have a better understanding of how to identify that bias when it creeps in and be able to score in a neutral way. And I just want to put kind of a question out there. Would you rather have a friendly rep who missed key steps or a less friendly one who solved your issue correctly?
I'd rather have a correct answer.
And especially when you come from a business outlook, I think that's kind of where we all feel. It's great to have that rapport, but ultimately comes down to results. So it's about getting the right results, which ultimately help the organization grow and get better at what we do.
Can I have both?
You can have both. Why not? As long as they're doing the job and they're great to get along with, it exists. That happens. Yeah, that's the ideal situation there, Susie.
Nice. Pop quiz. Who knows who this cat is? Daniel, we aged ourselves.
Yeah, pop quiz, who's old? So this was actually a sketch on Saturday Night Live in the pretty early 90s called Toons is the Driving Cat. And the whole sketch is about a cat who drives a car. That's the whole sketch. And he crashes every time. Not too deep, but it's funny. All right, so next, why does bias creep in? So let's talk about why this happens. Why do we sometimes inflate scores even though we know we shouldn't be doing that? So the first thing that we want to understand is bias is completely natural. It's not about being a bad reviewer. It's about being human. We all feel it. It's a part of our day-to-day life. Our brains are actually wired to make connections and judgments that can unintentionally affect our objectivity. I mean, I even bring up, places like the Olympics, the judges are always biased. It happens in every different facet of life. So it's always going to be there. So there's a few common reasons why bias creeps into our scoring now. So let's look at these three main drivers that we've got here. So first of all is going to be knowing that person. So when we have a relationship with somebody, we naturally want to support that person. We see their effort, we know what their work ethic is, or if they're, a friend with us, it's that positive feeling that makes us want to give them a better score. And I'm sure we've all encountered that too. Just a way of life. We like some employees that we work with better than others. That's normal. And that positive feeling is going to make them want to give them a better score, even if they didn't fully meet the rubric's requirements. So knowing the person can be a biggie when bias creeps in. Next could be avoiding awkward conversations. So another big one. So no one enjoys having, horrible, difficult conversations about if you scored somebody low, they want to know, why did this happen? What's going on here? So it's always easier for us as a way out to give a slightly higher score than we probably should, than to sit down with someone and explain why we actually marked them down. But honestly, avoiding this short-term discomfort, it's ultimately going to hurt our teammates because they don't get the feedback they need to improve. So if we're not being honest and having those conversations, nothing will ever get any better. And then also confusing friendliness and effort with performance. Another big one that happens all the time. So an agent might be incredibly warm, build fantastic rapport, so they sound great on the phone call every time you listen. Or maybe, someone works really, really hard to solve the problem. You can tell they're putting in the effort. We want to reward that effort. But it's our job to actually score that actual performance against the rubric, not on effort, not on friendliness. It doesn't always equal accuracy or completeness at the end of the day when we're focusing on those things. So always go back to that driving instructor analogy. They meant well, but ultimately it ended up in a failure for everyone involved because they weren't being honest at the end of the day.
Any thoughts or questions before we keep moving forward?
All right, so up next, we're just going to play a quick video, and it's going to just break down various different types of bias that we will encounter in day-to-day.
Hi, I'm Bill Shannon from Auburn University's Human Resources. This video is part of our Quick Dive Learning Series. Our goal is to help you as a supervisor and as a leader. Today's Quick Dive is about personal perceptions and bias in supervision and performance reviews. By the end of this short video, you should be able to understand and explain how bias affects the performance review process. It's important to be consistent in one's approach to performance reviews. Personal perceptions and biases can sometimes influence how supervisors rate an employee's performance. Often, supervisors are unaware that these biases even exist. It's important for supervisors to be aware of potential biases, understand them, and take steps to reduce them. There are 6 types of biases to be aware of. The first is that of leniency. Leniency is the tendency to evaluate all employees as exemplary, using inflated ratings rather than true assessments of performance. It's also important to note that inflated ratings as a compensation tool is not their intended use. Another type of bias is central tendency, which is the tendency to evaluate every employee as meets expectations, regardless of differences in performance. Strictness is a bias in which there is tendency to rate all employees at the marginal or low end of the scale and be overly critical of performance. The fourth type of bias to be aware of is that of contrast effects. This is tendency for the supervisor to evaluate an employee relative to other employees rather than on the planned job duties, responsibilities, goals, and development needs. The first impression effect is the tendency for a supervisor to make an initial favorable or unfavorable judgment about someone and then ignore subsequent information that does not support this impression. The last type of bias to be aware of is the similar to me effect. That is the tendency to more favorably judge those perceived as similar to the supervisor. Bias can seriously undermine the value of the performance review process. Supervisors should work to eliminate them. There are some simple questions supervisors can ask themselves in order to avoid bias. For example, am I basing my rating on documentation of my observations, or am I making judgment based on my perceptions? Am I looking at each of this employee's accomplishments and behaviors separately, or have I generalized about their performance? Have I looked at the whole scope of work for the year and their behaviors over time, or have I generalized according to my perceptions of them? Have I rated this employee on their actual accomplishments and behaviors, or have I rated them compared to other employees? Have I recognized any biases I may have so I don't let them influence my judgments? Avoiding biases is another reason to engage in the year-long performance management process.
All right, so what I want to dig into now is a couple scenarios we all might face where bias does play a role. So different teammates and how that bias might come up. I want you all to know we listen to calls every single week, score them every week. It's not easy. You know, it's hard to take that personal aspect out of the actual scoring because if someone does sound great on the phone, it's hard that you want to ding that score. But once again, it is necessary for CSAT, everything to get better as a team. So I want to share a scenario. Let's say we've got a teammate, for example, and we'll call her Alex, the rapport builder. She's a friendly teammate. So Alex is going to be known for being super friendly, incredibly warm and engaging on the telephone. Customers love to talk to her. She always greets everyone with a smile, cheerful attitude, and she excels at building rapport. But in a specific situation, during a call, Alex is so focused on a friendly conversation, she forgets to complete the mandatory date of birth verification step. So the bias risk here is because Alex did sound great on the phone, and she was super pleasant, you might be tempted to give them full credit for that call. However, we are missing the critical step, like the verification, which could be a serious error. So we need to correct that as soon as we can, regardless of the friendliness, because overlooking this is ultimately going to hide an area that Alex needs to grow. So let's say, for example, as Alex skipping that date of birth verification, what could be the result of that?
We can be sharing private information with someone who's not authorized on the account.
Exactly. Brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, simply that. And that's a big deal. Yeah, fraud just from, one small part. And it sounds like the call went great, but missing that is very vital. I mean, has anyone on this call ever been, tempted to overlook a miss because the agent did sound friendly? I have weekly. I'll admit that.
Not on verification of an account, because that's personally a very big pet peeve of mine.
Mhm.
But like the resolution questions, like every once in a while, I'll be like, like it was almost verbatim. Like we were so close to verbatim. I'm gonna give it to you on that one. So sometimes, yeah, being honest.
Yeah, that's true. And then we'll touch on those questions too in a bit too, but that's it's natural. Haley.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. You still in outer space?
Yes. I have a quick question just because this one kind of hit on verification.
Yeah.
We have a card on owner verification, but there's nowhere that specifies that we have to have two pieces of verification for guest. But everyone does agree that that is like a good SOP to have. And so it kind of makes it difficult when you get pushback from an agent where it was a call with a guest and you're like, hey, you didn't ask an additional piece of verification. And they go, well, we weren't told that we have to. There's nothing that reference that we have to. Is that anywhere that like we can update that to make that more aligned?
Yeah. Do you want to chime in there, Susie?
Yeah, love that question, Haley. Thank you for that. Yes, we are actively working. Right now, we're in a testing phase with a refresh of the rubrics, where we will have more of a general owner verification. That way, it's not a if this, then that. If, just get in the habit. That way, our owners get in the habit. They don't push back if they, get someone on the phone and are asked for date of birth and, cause an escalated situation, but also for guests, right? We need to verify two pieces of information. It's not in the existing rubric, so we are looking to get that added to the updates that we're doing. Yeah, because same could happen with a guest, right? I think I've heard a call where we're changing dates and we're billing things, but we're not even talking to the person that's listed on the reservation. And I don't see any context of this person anywhere else on the reservation. So it gets real iffy about, making changes there. So thank you for that question. Yes, actively working on that. Hope to have
Brilliant.
an update for you guys by November.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susie. And that, Mackenzie, you touched on exactly where my mind goes, where the SOP states it only for certain situations. I think we want to get to a place where it is needed in every interaction, just to make it easy. So you're not looking through why this reason, why not this reason. It makes it a lot easier, black and white. You're going to do it all the time for guests. You're going to do this all the time for an owner to take any confusion out. So that's kind of what we're working towards. Caesar.
Yeah, so on the topic of the bias when it comes to the friendly teammate, I think where I kind of struggle with this and I have to kind of ask myself is the validation of feelings, because sometimes it kind of touches on the tone, but it's like, is what they are saying actually validating of the feeling? Because I know the QA rubric, for example, is pretty specific, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an area where I see this bias questioning, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, we are talking to customers all day. We want to make sure we are being empathetic and having that feeling. So it's sometimes it doesn't come natural to us. We might have to do that when we're on the phone, but that's also what the rubric is scored on. So it is important that they do approach every call, with that empathetic, just emotion. We do care. We are here to assist. So good stuff. Thanks, Caesar. All right. So next, I want to touch on a colleague who might be, a hardworking colleague. So let's say we've got Ben, the eager learner. So who is Ben? So let's say Ben's going to be a newer rep. He's always trying his best. He puts in extra hours. He's asking a ton of questions. He's clearly dedicated to getting better at what he does. But let's say in a specific situation on a call, the customer asks a complex question. Ben struggles to find the correct answer, ends up providing some incorrect information, but eventually corrects himself after a long hold. So he clearly put in a lot of effort to resolve this issue. So the bias risk here would be like, Benny, I feel bad marking Ben down because you can see how hard he tried to do, a good job. But this bias, what it's doing is confusing that effort with the actual performance. So ultimately, we need to remember that that effort doesn't equal accuracy. So he's giving the wrong information at the end of the day. He's putting the customer on a long hold. The customer received information that was incorrect. So this all has to be reflected in those scores. So sometimes this effort, it can cloud judgment. And that's always been tough for me when, someone is trying to put in the work, they're doing as much as they can to get better. But once again, accuracy matters more than those good intentions do. So what could be the outcome for scoring someone too high in this situation?
I've seen it where we have to do an evolve only refund because we provided inaccurate information on the call. And so when we listen to the call and we hear that, we have to follow with whatever the teammate said to the promised to the guest. So I've seen that often, and that causes a lot of issues down the road.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alexa. And that's a great point. Yeah, could seem like a small problem, but that's going to snowball into someone else's issue. So ultimately, we want to correct that when it does happen, have that correct information. So this isn't impacting other team members' role, other team members' jobs. It's not impacting the homeowners or guests by giving them wrong information. So great stuff. And then also we want to make sure when we are giving that incorrect information, we're also probably going to lose that caller's trust. We're also going to lose credibility. So it is super important. At the end of the day, we are providing correct information. We are pointing that out in our scoring that, hey, this isn't correct. We don't want to be passing this information along. That's why I dinged you on this specific pillar. All right. So up next, we've got
I think
bias.
Haley has a question.
Oh, sorry, Haley.
Or a
Didn't see
comment.
that.
Sorry, I promise.
No problem.
You're good.
But I want to make sure I understand, so the agent gave the incorrect information, placed him on hold, came back, apologized, and then provided the correct information. Why wouldn't we mark them as passing for that because they corrected it and took ownership?
Well, the marking is also in that. And that's why it's kind of specific on that. It's also due to the time, the length of the call, Haley. So we're dinging down because it was wrong. They went to look up the information. I guess it would have been more accurate if I said it was over 2-minute hold, which ultimately we don't want to do. That's going to ding the call down. So coming back with information, it probably wasn't the best example. It's just kind of a hybrid of things which can go wrong. So if he didn't correct himself, obviously it would have been even bigger issue.
Gotcha. Okay. And just one more question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm kind of new to the QAing.
Yeah.
Where on the rubric do you mark for a long hold?
So it's under time on call. So
Yep.
we do on the AQA, which is going to be, scored by automatically. There's a specific one, which is going to be time on call, which is over 2 minutes. I
think it's also captured on the manual QA rubric, Haley, the very bottom pillar, that time on call talks about hold times. But I think you bring up a really good point, and I want to just kind of stay here for a second with this group, because this actually happened in, Lisa and Cassidy can speak to this. This happened in a calibration we were doing with Teleperformance, where agent gives wrong information, finds the correct information, corrects themselves. Half of our group marked down, right? We're calibrating with Teleperformance trainers, supervisors, QA. Some marked down, some gave points. And for us, on the Evolve side, we thought this is a great trust building exercise of admitting when you're wrong and sharing the correct information. But verbally admitting, you know what, I gave you false information. I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong thing. Let me correct that and give you the right information. That does build trust. It's okay. We're human. We all screw up. You guys have so many processes and SOPs you have to keep straight. It's gonna happen, right? It's going to happen. So I just want to encourage you all that if you do come across that, yes, coach the agent. You did a great job there by catching it, taking ownership, and correcting it. Because we do want to see that behavior, right? When we make a mistake, owning it, that's the best way to build trust.
Thank you guys.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Susie. Thanks, Haley. All right. So next scenario where bias could creep up would be with friendship and personal connections. Once again, shouldn't be overriding the rubric. So for example, here, let's say we've got Charlie, the lunch buddy. So who's Charlie? So Charlie's your work buddies, the guy you're always chatting with on Slack. You've worked together for years. You might grab a virtual lunch from time to time. You know about each other's lives outside of work. So there is a connection there. But in a specific situation, let's say Charlie handles a customer issue really well and resolves it efficiently. However, at the start of the call, he forgets to summarize the issue as required by the rubric and immediately jumps into handling the task. So the bias risk is here because of your friendship. You're going to be probably tempted towards overlooking that mistake. You might think, it's just one minor thing. Don't want to create an awkward situation with a friend, awkward conversation. But however, that fairness requires that scoring based on the rubric, which states that summarizing is going to be a required step. So any thoughts on that one, the summary?
Not so much the summary, but for the bias specific, this one I think is my biggest struggle. And like the similar to me, like they said in the video, because I think I try too hard to make it make sense to me of why they chose to go the route that they chose. But when I first started at Evolve, my team lead was one of my best friends from outside of work, and she had very like clear and opportunities for me and all of my QA meetings, and I think that was a good like reminder that didn't hurt me, and it made me better, and it's a good example and something that I have to kind of continue to look back on when I have conversations with friends, because it is challenging and it's not helpful to anyone if you kind of beat around the bush or anything like that. So it's a
I
good
love
call
that.
out.
I love that, Kathy, and you kind of nailed it. It's not personal. It's not about your friendship. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about taking it out of that and just focusing on the steps that we need to do. And the thing with the summary, a biggie, is when we look at the AQA, after the summary, the next thing is going to be the commitment to assist. So without the correct summary, they're not really doing the correct commit to assist. We don't know if we're tackling the same issue that we're supposed to. And then if we don't do the commit to assist, that's a fail. That's an auto fail on the AQA. So really important that we do get these steps and we do correct them when they're not happening. And I'll be completely honest, I think Cassidy, Lisa, and Susie can agree. The summary is usually lacking in about 60% of the calls we listen to. It's a big miss. So we are trying to get better on that. So I need you all to, step up and listen for those summaries, basically repeating back like, oh, Caesar calls in saying, hey, I don't know if the door code. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. Just to know that we're on the same page. You're having trouble getting in the home. Is that correct? And then you're getting that feedback. Yes, it is. Okay, brilliant. I'd be more than happy to help, which is your commit to assist. Comes right after it. Super smooth, super transparent. Caesar.
Well, I can kind of comment on both parts of this. I like what Cassidy mentioned about the bias because, yeah, I too experience this with my team. But I guess speaking to the summary part first, something that I noticed with my team is they're starting to summarize, but they're missing that second part, which is like the commitment to assistance.
Right.
So 100% see that as like a huge kind of gap with our team. But with this bias, when it comes to the close friend, most of you know at work, I call everybody my friend. But a good way that has helped me kind of navigate this has been the QA details. Like I have found that, communicating exactly why they lost that point and honing in on how they can improve that really helps hone in on like the kind of like the feeling that I would feel not giving details, right? Where it's like, oh, they're probably thinking I'm just marking like I am marking you down on this because of this. Here's how you can improve this. And I think it shows kind of a connection of, if you will, friendship or whatever, that the kind of positive feelings that come from I am marking you correctly to help you grow.
Couldn't have said any better myself, Caesar. Well, that's brilliant. That's exactly what we're touching on today. That's great stuff. And it's
That's true coaching.
yeah,
That's a
totally.
coach. Yeah.
That's leadership. Yeah, and that's what you want out of a leader. You want them to be honest because if your leader's being dishonest, it's not a comfortable team anyway. Trisha.
I was thinking this is also kind of similar to a situation where you might not be friends, but maybe, and I think it can happen more as a lead, where when you started, maybe you're now cueing somebody that coached you.
Yeah.
So that's another way that could easily be biased or uncomfortable. So I think that having those conversations with your manager too on best approaches.
And that's a brilliant point, Trish. And we're going to touch on that too, because we want to make sure that we're scoring the team honestly. Everybody on that team gets the same score, regardless of what my relationship is with you. It's based solely on facts, it's got nothing to do with these relationships. So absolutely brilliant feedback. Thank you, everybody. All right, so now let's touch on one more. So let's say we've got Dana, the high performer, the all-star. So who's Dana? We've all probably got a Dana on our teams. So Dana's going to be consistently one of those top reps. You know, her metrics are always through the roof. Calls are usually flawless. But during a specific call, Dana performs everything perfect up until the end. She misses one of the 2 required closing questions. So I think we already had this conversation on this call. You're assuming, you know, they're always great. It's not that big of a deal. And you think it's probably not worth mentioning to Dana. But for scoring to be fair, misses have to be scored consistently for every single agent, regardless of what past performance is. So those accurate scores are ultimately going to help build stronger teams in the long run. So also missing one of these questions results in, say we're talking about the AQA, if we miss one of these, what would missing one of those questions be? It's an auto fail. So if they don't get one of the 2, they're failing it regardless. So it is a big deal. And we've got to make sure that it is 2 questions. It's not one question where, is there anything else I can help you with? Did I resolve your issue? It's got to be 2 separate questions. So first of all, is there anything, did I resolve your issue today? Yes. Anything else I can help you with? No. So even on those run-on situations, it's still going to be a fail. It's got to be said as 2 specific, clear questions. So the bias risk here, like you said, it's based on past performance. And when a team does have some high performer where the rules don't apply, it's also going to cause a bit of resentment on that team. Why do they get special treatment? They did the same thing that I did. So we want to keep it all clear and concise every time for everybody, regardless of past performance or, you know, what those metrics are. All right, so a way we can separate the role of the job from the personal relationship, that's going to be through this bias buster checklist. So a couple of things you can always ask yourself when you are scoring somebody. First of all, did they actually complete the rubric step? So this question is going to force you to focus on that observable behavior rather than general impressions or feelings about that agent's friendliness or effort. You know, they were super kind, but did they do that? Did they ask for the date of birth? Did they give a summary? Did they recap and give a timeline? Were those things done? Second, would I score the same if I didn't know the agent? This is a great way to take yourself out of the equation. I know Cassidy. I'm going to give Cassidy a great score because I think she's a lovely person. You got to think of, hey, how would I score Cassidy if I've never met her? Does this meet the specifics it has to? If it doesn't, it's a fail. And then third of all, could I defend the score with the rubric only? So say you have to explain this to your supervisor just based on the rubric. Would it work? Would it hit all those details? When we do this, we're going to ensure that the score is based on concrete established standards. It's going to make that feedback neutral and professional rather than make it personal or judgmental. That's what we want to stay away from. So this checklist is super important because it manages common biases that we all have. It directly addresses the common reasons for biased scoring, such as wanting to, support somebody, avoiding those awkward conversations or confusing effort with actual performance. It ensures fairness for everybody. So it's going to apply the same standards to every single person on your team, whether the friendly who missed a verification step or whether a top performer who missed a closing question. And ultimately, it's going to build a stronger team. That I'm getting treated the same as Trisha is, the same as everyone else is on this call. You feel like you're being treated fairly. There's nothing worse than thinking, a manager has favoritism. They like so-and-so better than they like you. It's just not a healthy environment. So we want to make sure that we also can, through this bias buster checklist, facilitate objective coaching. So grounding all the scores in the rubric, it becomes easier to have those non-confrontational conversations. this is why I'm scoring you down, because you did this. Your tone was fantastic. That was great. And we can always coach to things like that. And it's really ultimately just to be fair and open with our teams, and be able to point out if someone missed a step, to have that conversation without it being awkward. All right, next I'm going to play a little call. It is an AI call, so apologize for the robot-y voices, but just want to play this, have a little discussion, what you think about it.
Calling Evolve, this is Alex. How can I make your day a little brighter? Oh, hello, Alex. This is Susan Gable. I'm just having a bit of trouble with my owner portal. I'm trying to block off a few dates in October for a family visit, and the calendar just won't save my changes. It's a bit frustrating. Oh, Susan, I can totally understand that. Technology can be so finicky sometimes, can't it? But don't you worry one bit. I'm here to help you get that all sorted out. A family visit sounds absolutely lovely. I hope you have a wonderful time. Thank you, dear. That's very kind of you. We're really looking forward to it. I bet. Okay, let's get this fixed for you so you can focus on the fun stuff. I'm pulling up your account now. Susan Gable. Yep, I see you right here. I can definitely block those dates for you from my end. Which dates in October did you need? Oh, that would be a lifesaver. It's October 12th through the 16th, please. October 12th through the 16th. You got it. I'm marking those off for you right now. And done. All set. The calendar is now blocked for your family visit. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Susan? That's it. Wow, that was so easy. Thank you so much for your help, Alex. You've been wonderful. It was my absolute pleasure, Susan. So glad I could help. You have a fantastic rest of your day and enjoy that family visit. You too, dear. Bye-bye. Bye now.
I apologize. That video sounded was like it was recorded in a can of soup. So sorry about that. But the gist I want to take away from that call is, did Alex sound warm? Did she build rapport?
Yes.
Yes. So I mean, an outsider listening to that call, if I didn't know the rubric, I'd be like, great job, fantastic call. However, what did she miss? Just give me a couple examples of things that she didn't touch on.
Verification.
Verify.
2 questions at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't summarize.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, she basically missed everything. But the friendliness as a bias is the friendliness that makes us think that was a great call. And it is, if we're not comparing it to the rubric, but that is what we are scoring all calls to. So it's good to point out that someone could be fantastic on the phone, super friendly, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, it could be an auto fail on the AQA. It'd be a massive fail when we're doing the manuals too. Yep, great point. Haley didn't ask the questions. It was just basically, I mean, I created it to be a very basic call to prove those things, but it just shows how, we can be swayed by feelings and, someone's persona on the phone. So just a little something to think about when we do listen to calls in the future. I should probably didn't leave notes either. How dare she? All right, so next I want to talk about a biggie for me, which is the coaching without awkwardness. So once again, I want to touch on, and I know when we've got people that we've worked with in the past or on our team with scoring them, it's always going to feel a bit awkward. But we want to bring it to the point that, this scoring isn't personal. It's all about facts. It's based on facts. It's based on the rubric. So we've just touched on the biases, and we even, have the tool now, the Bias Buster, to help score a bit more objectively. But also, what happens next after that? How do we deliver, honest feedback without making the conversation awkward for, everyone involved? So that's often why we inflate scores in the first place, because we don't want to have that awkward conversation. I'd rather give you a higher score and not have to worry about any kind of trouble that's going to come back to me. So the best practices we can do is, the main one is just focus on the rubric. It's not on opinion. It's based on, what we've got in front of us on those scorecards. That's going to be your best tool for removing awkwardness, is that rubric. You can sit someone down and say, hey, this is where you went wrong. The verification step was missed here, rather than say, you could have tried harder here. You should have tried harder. It's based on what they did not do. And the facts are there. They're evident on the call, also on the score sheet. Another one is, tie it to the customer impact. So connect it to how that customer is going to be impacted by, missing a specific step. So we want to freight feedback about how that misstep could, it's going to make coaching feel less like a personal critique, more like a shared goal. to improve that customer experience. So for example, you did miss this date of birth. It could end up, with a fraud situation for the homeowner. It's not personal, but it is going to impact that customer in the end of the day. It is a big, important detail that we have to make sure we are paying attention to. And also, for example, by not summarizing that issue up front, I've discussed this just a little bit ago. The rep could be tackling a completely different issue from what the guest even needs help with. I'm sure we've all been on the call where a summary wasn't given, and then ends up being 10 different issues, and the rep doesn't even know where to begin because they haven't gave a clear summary of what they are going to be tackling up front to take care of that issue. So also, once again, keep it short, clear, and professional. So the feedback should be short, clear, and focus on the behavior, not that person. It's got nothing to do with the personality, all about the hard, cold facts.
I'm curious, I have a question for the group. In the scoring that you do for teammates, do you have like a go-to in terms of like how you position your feedback, that you're like, this really makes an impact, or something that resonates well with your teammates?
Usually, like, I point out where they missed it. I explain the why, and then I tell them what they could do better next time, or how they should be presenting the questions or whatever. So that's typically how I leave feedback on QAs.
Love that. You make it actionable, give
Yeah.
them insight as to like some
Why it's important. We're
Yeah,
asked why we have to
why-
ask those questions, or why we have to summarize, and then tell them what they could do better next time.
love that.
And I love that too, Alexa. And I mean, the main thing Alexa touches on, a lot of the time, it's just really tiny tweaks. It's nothing big we got to do. It's, hey, you missed this, just do this next time. And like anything else, practice, you get better. It's going to become, it's going to become complete knowledge. Next time you get on the phone, you do that every time. Maybe leave yourself a little post-it note. That's what I do. I see the post-it note enough, I can remember stuff. And then practice makes perfect. So it's all about, when something does come up, say, hey, this is because you did miss a stop, like Alexa said, but next time you can ask these questions to make sure we get that information. Really, really good, easy stuff. Exactly. Great. That's great, Lolly. Yeah. Give them an example of how it could sound. Give them examples, maybe it's going to be role playing just to give that information. All great feedback.
With on top of what you said there, Daniel, what I like to do, especially if it is just a little tweak thing, where I like to point out where they've also done well. Like, hey, I really loved the beginning of your call. You had a great warm, tone, but we have to summarize the reason for them calling in, so that we know we're all on the same page. So that, I don't know, I guess like it's hard in a digital world to try and portray the positive intent that we have. So I think by actually spelling it out that there's positive intent and that we paid attention and noticed the good things, that folks are more open to constructive criticism and feedback.
I love it. I mean, that's exactly right. Yeah, we should, commend our people when they do a great job, and then also point out, hey, this wasn't right, but we're not here to attack. We are, when they do the right steps, it's nothing but praise. And everybody wants that praise. It's going to get them better at the job. And when we do approach it that way, it's not going to seem like an attack. I'm not going to, I'm not just getting on your case because you didn't do these things. This was great. You just missed this step. That can be fixed. We can coach through that. You'll get better next time. Not an issue. Everybody gets better on the team. Success all around. So great stuff, Rochelle. Thank you.
To add to those a little bit, like on the notes for the QA, I always put successes and what that was, and opportunities and what that was. And the opportunities don't necessarily need to be a miss in the rubric, but maybe something I noticed, be like, hey, you didn't do this wrong, but here's some other options you have too.
Brilliant. Absolutely love that. And that's kind of what we touch on when we do our calibrations, is those things are coaching. We can always get better at these things. So, your intro, it was warm, but hey, maybe try this. Just, giving those tips. It's not going to necessarily ding, the rubric, but we've always got these little tricks and tips to get better at what we do. So I think any feedback like that is, invaluable to your teams. All right, so this is just a couple phrases that we can use to approach, that's going to be neutral, behavior focused, consistent with the rubric we're using. So personal relationships are not going to affect the coaching. So for example, when focusing on observable behaviors, you can say something like, I noticed in the call that the customer's question about, changing the check-in date wasn't fully addressed. Let's go over how we can make that clearer next time. So just kind of what we talked about, sit down and have that discussion like, you did miss this. What can we do to make sure we get that information next time? When you need to keep feedback consistent, especially for a high performer or a friend, you can use a phrase like, we're measuring all calls against the exact same rubric. So here's how this call scored. And that's going to reinforce the standards that are going to be universal for the entire team. And also things like, using the correct note template. This is we're all held to the same rules here, and make sure everyone is doing, the same job for consistency. And then finally, if we want to encourage improvement collaboratively, you can frame it as a partnership. Say something like, hey, here's one area to strengthen. So a specific skill. How do you feel about working on that? And open that up to them, get them some feedback, well, yeah, I could use some work in that area. And that invites them into that conversation and gives them ownership of their own growth. So always to leave it on the table, this is also on you to get better at what you can do. So what we want to do is, first of all, like we said here, focus on observable behaviors, not the person. Keep that feedback consistent. Make it the same for everybody on your team. Make sure it's the same for every interaction, every QA interaction you're having. And then encourage improvement without favoritism. So once again, find out where they do need the help. We can sit down and work on those things to get them better, just so that everybody is getting the same treatment based on what the rubric is. All right, so now let's focus on the takeaways that tie all of this stuff together. So first of all, the most important thing to remember is, fair scoring isn't harsh. It's not meant to be an attack on anybody. It's honest. It can feel like we're being nice when we inflate a score to avoid a tough conversation or to reward someone's effort, but that kindness is ultimately going to be short-lived. And it's going to just inflate those scores to protect feelings in the time being. But it's accurate. Ultimately, it's not hurt. It's hurting the team more than anything else. Once again, think back to a driver instructor giving that that bad feedback up front sets that driver up for failure. And the big picture is going to be ultimately this isn't just about scoring calls. It's about living the values of the company. So when we do provide that honest feedback, we want to be customer obsessed. We want to ensure that every interaction meets, the highest standards. We also want to own our impact. So the work we put in as leaders, we want to take responsibility for developing our people. And it sounds like everybody on this call, you're already doing great development. You're doing great coaching. So it looks like we're already on that path to excellence anyway. And ultimately, by being a fair and objective scorer, it's going to lead to high performance across your entire team. And it's going to improve, our key metrics that were scored on, CSATs, NPS, and ultimately it's going to reduce customer churn, which is what we're trying to avoid. So just by being honest and fair in our feedback, we're not building stronger teammates. We're also building, a stronger team, ultimately a more successful organization. We've all got a part in playing to make this, a better place to work, a more open place where we can actually, we can talk freely and, people can understand that this isn't a critique. It's only there to make you get better at what your job is, to get more consistent. So what's one thing you can implement, say, coming out of this training to make your scoring more fair, more objective?
I'll be the first to go. I think the biggest one is, again, realizing that by doing this, we're setting everybody up for success. When we're scoring in bias, we're not actually doing anyone any favors at all, because we're allowing these behaviors to continue, which will eventually negatively impact. But when we remove the bias, we're setting this up not just for our customers, but especially for our agents to start delivering that 4-star every time.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you, Lisa. And that's very true. I mean, once we, turn a blind eye to one bad behavior, typically more will follow. So if we don't address these when they do come up, it could snowball into something even worse. Then you've got to have a conversation that's going to be extremely awkward about, like, now all of these things matter where I didn't score you down in the past. Now I've got to justify how, to get around that conversation. Align across the team. So switching, exactly, Haley. And that's also massive. As we all know, teams, Next week, we could all be on different teams. You never know. Changes happen so much. So we want to make sure if I jump to someone else's team, I know exactly how things should be. I know what's expected of me. I know how to perform. Consistency is key here. So great point, Haley. All right. So what can we do as a reinforcement plan to, make sure this all goes the way we want it to? So first of all, calibrations, QA calibration sessions, keep everyone aligned. I don't know if everyone is already taking part in those calibration sessions, but really what they want to be, these calibrations are just going to be focus meetings. And it's not to give everyone extra work, just to create, once again, a consistent rhythm of practice that we all get used to. Listening to calls, hopefully everyone gets on the same page as to what's acceptable and what isn't. So the process is just like we listened to the call today. Everyone will listen to a call, score it individually. So there's no bias, no one's influencing anyone else. And then after you've scored the call, just discuss it as a team. And then you can, touch on that bias buster if it helps. And just ask yourselves as a team, did the agent actually complete, what was required, what was asked by the rubric? Would I score the same way if I didn't know who it was? I mean, that might also make sense to listen to calls from different teammates. So to take that bias out completely. And then most importantly, could I defend the score with only that rubric in front of me? And ultimately, the goal of any of these sessions is just to align on what good sounds like and what it looks like, and to practice applying that rubric consistently. And it's a safe space when we're in these situations to, challenge each other, find out what somebody's point of view is. They could have a different point of view. They might have a great reason. I mean, I sit in calibrations every week. There's also always something that I didn't catch and someone else did. And like, wow, okay, well, that definitely changes my score because I completely missed this. So these calibrations are super, helpful to make you more successful at spotting where we are, dropping the ball sometimes. So to catch our own biases in a low stakes environment, so we can be open, we can be clear with each other. And by doing it regularly, we're going to ensure that fairness and objectivity are always top of our mind. And then also to support this, QA will have spot checks where, they can go through too and identify where there's issues where, somebody might have missed a specific scoring point. We can listen to these calls, also make sure there's no inflated scoring taking place, just to make sure there's more eyes on this, to make sure everything is consistent. And then also we want to make sure, which is super important, is to provide recognition for, team leads who are being consistent, who are being fair in the scoring, because that's ultimately where we want to go. And ultimately, once again, it's about owning our impact. By committing to these calibrations, we're committing to providing honest feedback, objective feedback that's ultimately going to build a stronger team in the long run for all of us. And that about wraps it up, everybody. So just want to leave you with a couple of words here. Score fairly, coach honestly, and succeed together. So just like I said, it isn't personal. It's all about looking at the facts and being able to have that discussion. And as you've all pointed out too, praise when we do a good job. Everybody loves feedback, and it's a lot easier to approach negative feedback when we do, we are praising the people we're chatting with. And we've got a couple minutes left. Does anyone have anything to add?
Lisa actually has a really good question in the chat. So the question is, what if we score based on the rubric and get pushback or score change saying we scored too harshly? Oh my gosh, Lisa, appeals. Appeals. I love your response, Molly. Getting a second pair of eyes on it. Does that happen often for you? Is this like a regular occurrence that you're?
Not now, because, obviously I'm doing it with you, but previously, yes, there, it was, if I was out of alignment with my manager, the manager would go in and change scores. Teammates would come back, state that it was unjust, unfair, and they would go to the manager afterwards stating, here's my reasoning behind it. And it created a scenario where it was hard. It was hard to go into these unbiased situations, feeling comfortable and confident with following the rubric and giving the score, knowing that at the end, it could be changed, or due to the, appealing process, it just made the situation going in knowing that certain teammates might be viewed differently than others as well, to be able to truly score unbiasedly, consistently, feeling like if I'm going in not taking into account that this process could happen just because some of my teammates had stronger personalities than others.
I mean, I'd say this is what this whole thing is about, isn't it? Is on the rubric, did it pass or did it not? And it's a simple conversation. Hey, you didn't do this. Whatever they come back with, if it doesn't fit what the rules are, then so be it. It didn't pass the question. And like Susie said, also getting a second pair of ears on the call, listening to it too. Maybe they see things from a different example, and then I think more heads are better than one, where you can sit down. But ultimately, we don't want people tricking us into, hey, well, I tried to do this and this. It's got to be you either did or you didn't. There's no no gray area. It's not about being convinced by someone else because they think they should have passed. So, Susie, we're going to add something. Then it looks like Caesar's got a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sticking to your guns that the rubric is a source of truth. But I think Molly has a good point here that, if the process, and you guys, apologies, I don't know the clear ins and outs of what your appeals process is internally. But if there's a process where a team lead scores, teammate doesn't agree, pushes back, shares with manager changes the score, then I think probably the best bet is like what Molly has noted here, is that you get that second pair of eyes before submitting, make sure you're on the same page. The problem can come in when we're being very clear and unbiased, and our manager might be a little bit biased. So they have also gone through this training and they also have eyes on their scores. So we're being cops, but I think you can always, bounce it off your manager. You can bounce it off another team lead. You can bounce it off me. I think the rubric should be like a prescription. Was it prescribed? Did it fit? That's the whole thing of like removing all of the argument around it. But get a second pair of eyes. I think that's super helpful. Caesar, what do you got?
Well, I wanted to share this as a tip, and I think it touches on what Molly is saying and what Lisa is saying. And I see Molly actually just put it in the chat. So when I complete a QA, I got into the habit of tagging the teammate. I think it helps with visibility for them and invites them to kind of look at it. And then, of course, I do tag my manager right away. And so an example I wanted to share was recently, I give comments, right? I give my QA details, but I give an overview like, hey, this is what I believe how this call went. Take a look at the QA details. But at the end, I always say, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, because it invites kind of them to look at it actually, because that doesn't always happen, right? When we just complete those, but it invites that. And I have I had the situation where a teammate commented and they said they flagged a certain part, and I invite that. I think it's related to this whole bias training, right? I may make a mistake here or there, and I'll always look at it again. And then that instant, because I had my manager tagged in it, it was super easy to let the teammate know, like, hey, I looked this over, I'm not changing anything, but let's get Kim's input. And she double down, let her know that we were aligned. And I just think it really helps that encouragement of teammates, visibility and alignment that we're kind of hoping to strive for. So wanted to share that.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
That's a great tip, Caesar. I would encourage all of you to share to follow that same step, so you're all on the same page. Good stuff. Any other questions? Or I know we're at time, but happy to make time. Well, thank you guys so much for your engagement. We will start actually doing QA calibrations. I think your senior managers might be doing like smaller internal calibrations, but we are going to start doing monthly calibrations with the team leads starting in November. So we will have time to connect each month. We definitely want to get more involved and support more in your day-to-day. So look forward to that.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely rest of the week, and hopefully you get your weekend coming up and have some time to relax.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.